Singapore is often seen as one of the wealthiest nations in the world, but at the same time, it reportedly has one of the highest levels of income inequality among developed countries. Would you agree with this statement?
I'd agree with that, yes.
Yes, I agree with the statement because for me, I have to work a part-time job in order to survive in Singapore alone because now everything is expensive.
Yes, because there's always news articles and documentaries, especially in Singapore's context, right, where there's the wealth gap in between lower income families and the higher incomes. So there's always be neighborhoods where you can especially find those lower income families that are often struggling, and they're often living by paycheck to paycheck. So it's very difficult, and also it's not that fair because in Singapore's context now, right, to get a good job you need to have a good education, and not many people have that opportunity or that luxury to get that for themselves. So yeah.
Then how serious of a social issue do you think income or wealth inequality is in Singapore?
I think it's serious enough to be noted as an issue, but not serious enough to be addressed first due to the other issues happening throughout Singapore, for example, the housing issues and the space available.
I think it really affects when it comes to cost of living because of huge income gaps within the society. It gets increasingly difficult to own a house in Singapore, and also affording food, groceries, transport, just the basic necessities. Yeah.
I mean, compared to other countries, I think that it's actually quite okay over here. I mean, based from other countries I've visited and friends that live in other countries, I mean, the wealth distribution, the class system is a lot harsher than it is here. I mean, Singapore still offers housing, lower prices, and it actually financially it helps you a lot financially.
Yeah, because the Singapore culture, everybody's so competitive that I know definitely everybody will feel bad. If they see anybody suffering unfairly, right, they will want to do something about it. But at the same time, I think a lot of it is also as long as it's not me mentality, I can copy. As long as I'm doing better than somebody, that's good. So that on that side, there's I guess a stigma because they would not want to be in that position. Because who wants to be poor, right? So if they want any advantage they can get to further themselves in life. That's why Singapore is able to progress so much because we're always pushing forward, and then we're trying to raise our quality, our standard of living, right? And if being poor is a deterrent, that forces us to put in more effort and try to excel in life.
Can you provide some examples from your personal experience, or do you notice or feel any significant wealth gaps between different groups of people in Singapore?
Yes, due to the price increase and the increase of food in general. And due to these price increases, a lot of my favorite food has closed down.
It depends on the people because usually for me, I can survive around $10 a day. Yeah, and I mostly usually eat at home. I have a friend who is some very rich and probably prestigious, but yeah, they also say it's pretty expensive to live in Singapore. And for a person like me, which is an average income household, so yeah, usually had to work to survive in order to live in Singapore.
Yeah, I think something that you notice straight away, and which will be common to Singaporeans, is having a helper at home. So how much you pay the helper versus how much you get paid. I think there is that level of disparity there. But I wouldn't say that you feel the income is unequal per se because of things like the exchange rate and how much she's earning here is actually enough to support her her family back home. Yeah, so I mean I guess that's a really clear example of a wage gap.
Okay, so yeah, one thing is this particular. So I myself I used to be in international school, and when you compare international schools and local schools, here in local schools, depending on when you start off at your neighborhood school, you can easily attend and pay fees that less than $100 a month. It can go to even free sometimes for citizens. And then when you go up to international schools, some of these schools can go up to 30, 40, and I think Even I think after COVID, it's over 50,000 for some of these schools. So already you see in something as basic as education, there's such a huge gap, right? I mean, from $5 to $50,000 is an absolutely ridiculous difference. And it's not that in Singapore that public schooling is, it's bad or anything. Singapore's public schooling system is one of the best in the world. And I think that's probably one of the most prominent examples you see, that it's almost two completely different lives, and it's like two completely different sides of the country and two different types of people.
Everyone seems to be saying that housing is a major issue. Could you explain how unaffordable housing is for average people?
In terms of housing, I think yes, housing in Singapore is quite expensive. It's because of all the foreigners that are coming in to buy our properties. Maybe the prices keep rising because the supply of land in Singapore is so limited, but the demand is quite high. We have foreigners and we have locals all trying to fight for the same housing, and that's where our public housing comes in to try and combat this. And on top of that, we have the government has, I think, imposed some tax rates to stop people from buying more than one property or selling their property too fast to make quick cash lah. Yeah.
I can't really speak for most people, but for myself, as a student, I'm definitely worried about owning a house in Singapore, because I've been keeping up with the news, and there's a lot of attention on HDB flats that are sold for more than $1 million. So it does make me a little bit worried about what's to come in the future.
I would say that, definitely in certain parts of the resale market, it's getting a bit unsustainable where you have $1 million flats. But I would say to people like me who are just starting out, I think housing can still be pretty affordable, and especially with the measures that the government has just put in place. I think there's a lot more grants available, especially for singles now who are looking to buy flats, as well as for first-time homeowners, especially if you're living near your parents. That's something that I took advantage of as well when I bought my resale flat. Yeah.
Singapore is so expensive to buy a house leh. It's so bad. I've even considered maybe I just stay with my mom. I don't know, cause I feel like I may be running out of time also, cause I'm already in my 20s, right? I'm already just starting my 20s, and I feel the need to start saving up money. However, I also want to get to be able to live my life and buy stuff that I really want. But there's always the thought in my mind where what if I do not have time to save up money to get a house also, especially with a partner. Yeah, so there's that uncertainty. Yeah.
Then how are you supposed to get a house? How can you afford to get a house?
I think the most important is to have high income, high earning power, and then possibly considering having side hustles or other streams of income. That could possibly help. But also, I know of more privileged friends with huge family support, whereby their families are very willing to down pay their house for them. So you can see there's different options out there for Singaporeans, but for a very regular hardworking Singaporean, it really starts with having a solid paying job. Yeah.
I mean, the most common way of buying a house is you earn enough money and then you can get a mortgage, and then you take a loan from the bank and you keep paying it off for the next 20, 30 years. And otherwise, there's no direct solution. I guess it's just an inherent problem, and it's not a problem in just Singapore. It's a problem in almost every metropolitan city in the world. Your New York, London, and in slowly it's going to be another place in Southeast Asia as well. Southeast Asia in general, the economy is, it's been growing very fast, and eventually other places are becoming more expensive. But yeah, in Singapore, it's becoming a fairly unaffordable place to live and buy a house, even if you're staying in public housing. So to say that I don't think there's any solution. I think it's just a problem. It's just a problem in it how it is. It's maybe just the cost of living in such a otherwise safe and great city.
I think one common thing that most people go through is you stay with your parents for a while. You live with them, and then once you eventually save up, find a partner, you can look towards a BTO or maybe resale, which is much more expensive lah. I think the government also has incentives that they've thrown out. If you stay near your parents, you get a certain amount of percentage off the HDB you purchase or your BTO. If you purchase housing with a partner, you also get, I think, a discount as well, something along those lines. Yeah.
Can you explain what BTO is for a non-Singaporean?
BTO is called built to order. So it's basically you, I guess, in a sense, bid against other people to purchase a property that hasn't been built yet. So that's why it's called built to order. Yeah. So once you get this purchase, and there's enough people that purchase this property at a certain location, then they'll start building the property itself.
So, if it's true that Singapore is a wealthy nation and everyone seems to be relatively well off compared to less developed countries, why do you think that there's still this issue of income and wealth inequality to begin with, and why does this happen?
Okay, I think it's broken down into different ages. Okay, so most of the people with lower income, most of them are elderly. So in the past, maybe education wasn't emphasized so much as it is now in Singapore. So maybe due to that, the fact that they were working like factory jobs and all that stuff, our economy has changed so much from like being a production society into like one more of like technology and knowledge. I think that transition caused a lot of people to lose their jobs, mainly like the upper like ages, and then this inequality of income happened. So those that couldn't adapt, I guess they fell out and couldn't, if they can't keep up with like all the technological changes we're going through, and they can't adapt to all these changes because we are moving quite fast as a country, then I think that's where the gap starts to come in, and that's how people get poorer, or like there's a income inequality gap. And then once that gap comes in, like someone who is like maybe a grandmother who's like not so wealthy, then she has to support her children. Maybe she can't support them, then they can't go to school. Then they can't get an education, and the cycle just keeps repeating, and they're stuck in this loop of I guess lower income class. Yeah.
I think it's a bit of a systemic issue that Singapore is trying really hard to address, But at the same time, like if you look at like the socio-economic statuses of different people, right? There are those that seem to have a leg up on life and those that don't. I mean, at the same time, I know that the government will do whatever they can, right, to ensure that you are covered. Like now, if I'm not wrong, education is free all the way until like O levels, right? Like Sec 4. So that's a positive.
One aspect would be there's not enough jobs around Singapore due to the current influx of people and the density of our country. But also without the density of the country, there won't be enough jobs. So it's really a vice versa thing.
Can you elaborate more about the influx of people coming into Singapore?
Because currently as though I feel like that our country is growing very fast, exponentially. Maybe a bit too fast for our current situation. Then there's too many people around, for my personal opinion, now these days.
I think this is going to sound tacky, but I think a lot more of like outside foreigners, let's say from the UK, that come in, that are hired from companies to come into Singapore. This sounds really tacky, but I guess you could see that as companies choosing to use foreign workers instead of Singaporean workers for their companies.
I would say with the competitiveness of like trying to find a job nowadays, because everyone is trying to fight for like a spot on like the table to like to be able to earn money to support themselves, but it's really hard because like I said, not everyone has like the privilege to get a very good education, and nowadays jobs, they really require you to get a good educational like level certificate to be able to even get hired for a job. So it's really a struggle because I've heard from some people they applied 100 jobs but yet they still don't get any callbacks. But I mean, they're still young and they still have a roof over their heads. But what about those people who don't even have that to begin with? So they're really struggling more. Because even though we are pretty well off, you'll still see homeless people on the streets, and it's really sad to see.
Do you believe that anyone that works hard or is smart can climb up the social ladder to become wealthy in Singaporean society?
Yes, I think honestly, if they apply themselves, right, like they focus on what matters to them, if they have a driving motivator to do better in life, and they focus on that goal, they don't stray away from that, then they have a good chance at succeeding. But obviously it helps if you are well off to begin with. But at the same time, like anybody should, if they all start out at the same level, right? Everybody has the same level of education and they progress together, right? If they don't straight away from that, they should be able to succeed.
Working hard is not really enough to be successful. You need to have the right kind of attitude. You need to know the right environment, and to some extent luck is a huge part of it. If your environment, the people around you, your parents, whoever you interact with the most, they're from a slightly wealthier background, and they are from a particular, they work in maybe a high-paying corporate job, then it's more likely that you will end up around the same path. Now, let's say you come from a low-income family. Your parents didn't go to university. They were in the working class. It's not to say that you can't move up the ladder, but it's definitely harder. And I think that's just how it is. It is not always about just working hard. It's a lot about what type of background you're from, what type of what are the cards you've been dealt, and hard work, skills, and luck also plays a very big part of it, in my opinion. If you're somebody who's just struggling to pay your bills, you can't really be worrying about 20 years later. You're worrying about, can you put food on the table tomorrow? So I think that's the main factor.
What factors do you think hold young people back from climbing up the social ladder?
Maybe they, again, I can't really speak on behalf of them, but in my opinion, it could be perhaps a lack of access to certain materials or tuitions for the younger generations, I feel. Yeah.
Then for yourself, perhaps, what options do you think you have?
As a student, I definitely find it very hard to juggle between being a full-time student and a part-time worker. So I am actually struggling a little bit to find my footing, but I'm quite certain that maybe through my own working hard to apply for more part-time jobs, that would really help, I think.
Because they're already privileged enough to get a good education and have maybe a good family background to give them sort of a boost, because with connections all around, right, you're able to get anywhere in life when you have good connections, no matter how bad of a sport you are. So it's almost like cheating in the game, and it's a bit unfair because there are people who genuinely work hard. It's just that they do not get as much opportunities in life. So yeah.
Then why do you think that is? What are some factors that will hold young people back?
I would say connections, because people now, right, they are also, they're going to uni just to build up more connections with people, so that once they graduate, right, they know all these people, so they can get around, and it's very easy to get opportunities.
Have you seen anyone who made it by themselves without having rich parents in Singapore society?
In Singapore society? Not in Singapore society. But the reason why I think this topic is quite close to me is because my dad, his family, but it was in Malaysia of course, his family wasn't so rich. He had a family of I think 12 people, so he had to, his father, my grandfather, worked very hard to keep them afloat and try to send them off to other countries so that they could gain better opportunities and live a better lifestyle. So yeah.
My ex-employer was self-made, so he runs a consumer electronics brand that I think a lot of Singaporeans would be very familiar with. So he kind of started the business himself, so started with drop shipping without a lot of initial funding. It's stuff that he saved basically, and he got some other friends to chip in. And now, it's one of the biggest, local electronics companies now. So I guess that's a great example. Yeah.
Yes, actually, and I would say they go very unconventional routes, because some do decide to be an entrepreneur and they quit school and they start something of their own, and it's possible, but things that we see in media is just the top 1-2%, right, that they do make it in life. So there are stories like that, but it's just how often it do happen. Yeah.
Okay, there's this one girl that I don't really like in secondary school, but because right, some context, she didn't really put in effort in school. She always sleep in class and all that, but even then she still found a way to support herself by doing these small businesses. She'll buy over supplies and she's able to make a living for herself, especially because in the Chinese market, right, because she mostly promotes her products in Chinese, so she's able to reach a wider range of audiences, even though I don't like her. But it's nice to see that she's able to do something for herself. Yeah.
Then, what kind of job or work do you think you need to have in order to really climb up the social ladder to become a multi-millionaire or even a billionaire? And is it even possible?
I believe it's not possible to be a billionaire, especially here in Singapore. But those people who are billionaires in Singapore usually either who already are up in the social ladder or they are from other countries who is already a citizen here.
I think in our modern day society, it's very difficult to become a millionaire or a billionaire because I mean, there's so many ideas going on right now, and I guess you could climb up the social ladder. This is a bad example, but my brother's in national service right now, and he sees a lot of his friends climbing up the social ladder mainly through the military, and then you form more connections through NS. Like surprisingly, you form a lot of connections through NS. And I guess that does actually help you build up, but I wouldn't know if that makes you a billionaire.
I don't think that is on the agenda of a lot of I don't think that fits into what a lot of the regular Singaporean hopes to achieve. So I would say that is very difficult. I think you would have to have a really solid either like a business plan or really have that knowledge and skill set, especially if you're building your own personal brand and business. Yeah. So billionaire, multi-millionaire, yeah, really, man. I feel like that involves so much more management because it's not something that I think you can build by yourself, and you probably need to assemble a team, find investors, that kind of thing. So yeah, challenging. Yeah, but I think definitely possible if you have the right mindset and as well as you're willing to learn. Yeah.
Then, what would you think would be the average aspiration for a typical Singaporean?
Honestly, I think the traditional Singapore dream is to just own a home, a HDB, have a family, settle down. I mean, some people want to have a car, go on holidays. I think this is a very standard Singaporean dream, and I think majority of Singaporeans, I would say, still kind of subscribe to that. Yeah.
And also, do you believe that you are better off or worse off than your parents' generation in terms of opportunities?
I believe we are better in terms of generations because we have technology to back us up, and we actually have more opportunities rather than our parents' generation time. But I believe that back then, in our parents' generation time, it's much more easier to climb the social ladders as opposed to now.
I do think that I am in a better position than my parents, solely because my parents put me to where I am, to a spot where I get better opportunities. For one is the option of getting into a university, which is not as prevalent in my parents' generation. And through going to university, I get to know different types of people, different types of industry, as well as roles that I could get myself into before I start my first career, which definitely helped.
Wow, that's a good question also. I think definitely better off. I think there's a lot of new interesting job opportunities that are emerging now because of things like AI and tech. Yeah, so that's a really huge new sector which I think is growing, and which existed back then as well, but maybe not to as large an extent. I will say though that my parents' generation, especially when I was born in the 90s, I think that's when Singapore was in a particular stage of rapid growth. So, and I think what we spoke about earlier about that aspect of being being self-made, I think that was a lot stronger back then because the economy was really doing well, or at least it was picking up rapidly. Singapore was one of the 4 Asian tigers back then in terms of the size of their economies. So yeah, so a little wins on both sides. Yeah.
This issue is actually a global issue and not just a Singaporean issue.
Yep.
For Singapore, how do you think this issue can be addressed, or is it almost an inevitable consequence of capitalism and not much can be done about it?
I think that there are a lot of things that can be done about it. Is whether you can eliminate it or not. I think it's a problem that will always be there lah. In terms of in a sad way, that for there to be winners, there must be losers in a sense. So I think Singapore is closing that gap between in terms of people not being employed and people being employed, and the income gap, I think, because they do give incentives to those of a lower income class. They do, I guess, provide vouchers and stuff. They do provide like cheaper housing, but in terms of quality wise, I'm not sure whether it's up to the preference of those who live there lah. Yeah.
The Singapore government has various policies aimed at reducing income inequality. How effective do you think these measures are in addressing the wealth gap?
I think that these issues address the wealth gap in the sense that they're giving out money to people, but they're not telling people what to do or how to be successful in their future. So, in a sense that they're just giving them a lifeboat to float on, but you eventually sink without any advice on how to find jobs or how to get things. Because the government, gives out all the financial schemes ahead, but people just spend it, and then if they cannot find a job, then how would they be able to continue living off? So in a sense, the government is just emptying their treasury for the Singaporeans, but not creating any revenue for us.
I think also government is trying to help in terms of training and upskilling people so they can get better jobs. But that is something that's definitely more long term. It's not something that people start suddenly getting jobs, because there needs to be new jobs and opportunities for that as well. But overall, I think I think the government has done a good job to at least address the issue of income inequality. However, they've also definitely done a good job at hiding income inequality, which can be good or bad based on how you perceive it. And I think to say inequality is it's just there everywhere in the world. It's not something that's going to ever go away. It's not necessarily something that can be completely contained. But I think just you have to really do what you can, and if you have the resources to do well, if you've been given a good life, I think just make the best of it, and just count your blessings. And maybe if you're from a tougher situation and you have to work harder, I think just stay focused and have faith that one day it'll work out for you. I think the rest is kind of just out of our control.